Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. This video is a follow-up to one that I released recently in which I spoke about the dangers of pressure in comic book bins. Too much pressure, overstuffing a comic book bin will result in defects being introduced to your comics from the comics themselves and or from the backing boards that you are using. So that's something that you want to avoid. When I created that video, I spent time talking about the problem and demonstrating the problem. I didn't necessarily spend as much time talking about the solution. And part of the reason for that is had I done that, that would have been a 20-minute video. So I wanted to create this video to answer some of the questions, the lingering questions that folks have sent to me as a result of having watched the first video. If you didn't see the first one, go ahead and check that one out and then go ahead and check this one out. Fingers crossed between the two, I will resolve a lot of people's questions. But with that said, across the room, I have set up a table full of bins from my comic book collection. And I've done this to demonstrate several different things that we are going to talk about right now. On the table in front of me is an assortment of comic book bins. None of them are extremely well organized, but this gives me an opportunity to demonstrate a couple of things that we're going to talk through. Generally speaking, you want to avoid a bin that looks like this. There clearly are not enough comics in this bin to allow these books to stand up, and as a result of that, they fall into the back, which creates an opportunity for defects to be introduced. That is something that we want to avoid. You might want a bin that looks a little bit like this, maybe better organized, but this allows for the books to move front to back, but not so much room that they fall over. You can easily shift through, grab a book and pull it out without having to shift things around to do so. Potentially this bin could benefit from having a couple of more comics in here to absorb some of this space, but generally speaking, this is not a bad setup. Over here, what I've done is basically demonstrated what a lot of people do. They don't necessarily have enough comics to fill an entire bin, so they put additional materials in there, like backing boards is a great example to absorb some of that extra space. A couple of other bins over here that I'll show, but again, the real reason why I wanted some of these in here is to demonstrate this. From this vantage point, I want to demonstrate something else, that size matters. Not all storage boxes are created the same. They are not the same size. So here on the left, we have a printed BCW bin. This is a generic bin that I found that you can see is much shorter than a BCW bin. It is also much shorter than this bin, which is a no-ma bin. I don't know a ton about this company, but I will talk about them briefly a little bit later. But you can see their bin is definitely larger than the standard. This bin is also longer than your standard BCW cardboard bin. And again, over here on the right, we have the plastic BCW bins, which are about the same size as your BCW cardboard. So let's talk about these bins in greater detail. On the left here, we have the BCW printed bins, and according to the website, they can hold around 150 to 175 current to Silver Age comics. They will also run you about $12. This is the generic bin. Not sure how much this bin costs, nor am I sure how many it can hold, but we can assume it's going to hold fewer than any of the other bins given its smaller size. Next up, the no-ma bin. Again, this one can hold, according to the website, 150 to 185 current Silver Age and Golden Age comics. This bin will run you about $13. What's great about this bin is that it is reinforced, has a reinforced cover. It can actually hold a couple of 100 pounds. So if you have to stack some bins, the no-ma bin is not a bad way to go because you won't crush the top of the box, the bin, the same way that you might actually crush a BCW cardboard bin. That's a huge problem with these, at least in my opinion. And again, this bin will run you about $13. BCW bin, this is the generic cardboard box. This one will hold around 150 to 175 comics, specifically current and Silver Age, and will run around $11. On the end, we have the more expensive option. We have the more expensive option over here. This is the BCW plastic bin. This thing will hold up to 150 comics, standard comics according to the website, and it will run $36. One of the cool things about these bins is that they actually have these dividers that come with the bin. I think there's 2 per bin that allow you to break up your comic book bin into sections. So you don't have to do kind of what I did over here, which is to absorb the space with bubble wrap or backing boards. You can actually use these dividers to break up the comics, alleviate some of the pressure that might be in here, and the pressure to shove too many comics in here to kind of keep them upright. These dividers are great. So let's say that you don't want to spend $36 to get these really fancy bins, but you want to have some dividers and some options and flexibility. What you can do is go with your standard cardboard box like you normally would, and you can pick up something called Comic Barricade. This is actually a product that it's basically a divider that has some teeth in the bottom, teeth in the side, and it bites into the inside of the cardboard bin to prevent the comics from falling front to back. It's a great option. I honestly don't know how much they cost. You have my apologies for that, but that is an option. BCW also offers some dividers that you can use to alleviate pressure, to break up your bin, to keep it a little better organized. These actually came from Max Protection. I'm honestly not sure how I got these, but I did have to modify them. I cut the bottom of this off so that they can actually fit down in there. The reason I actually did this is not because I wanted to organize this bin. It was to prevent light from coming in the front side where the handle cutout is. I didn't want the comic on the inside to get bleached, so that's part of the reason why I actually did that. But you could very easily shift these dividers elsewhere to help organize. I don't think that they're going to help with preventing books from falling over, but it is a good option for organizing one's collection if you want to go that route. So fingers crossed that actually addresses a lot of the questions that people have out there. But I want to make one additional point here, and it's your judgment. You are going to have to use your judgment to evaluate what good looks like in your collection. And I say that because the manufacturers make recommendations on the number of books that can fit in a bin, but they nor I know your setup. Are your bins all the same type of comic? Are they all moderns? Or is it a mixture of modern comics, annual, silver age, golden age, etc., etc.? If you're trying to get those different types of comics in the same bin, it's going to impact the number of comics that can actually fit in a bin. To complicate matters a little more, are you using cheap backing boards or are you using good backing boards? Are you using 1, 2, 3, 4 backing boards? Because I know a lot of people actually do that. That takes up room in your bin. Are you using poly or mylar? Are you using 2 mil or 4 mil of that? All of these things influence how many comics can actually fit in an individual bin, in addition to, as I mentioned, the size of the bin itself. So listen to the recommendations, look at your situation, make some judgment calls. It never hurts to buy an extra bin to prevent damage to your comics. With that said, I'm going to wrap this video up. If I've missed something, be certain to sound off in the comments because you might inspire another video down the road. But fingers crossed that this does answer questions. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so. If you want to reach out to me, you can do it on Instagram at Regie Collects.
Big city dreams, but that's a small town thing. I thought the big city life was the only way you could be crowned king.